Have you ever slept inches away from the person you love, yet felt like you were living on different continents, and wondered who should reach out first before everything quietly falls apart? In this video, I share my real journey of moving to the United States, building a life from zero, and surviving months of silent nights sleeping back to back with my spouse, and how one small moment changed everything. We slept back to back. Sleeping inches away from the person you love can feel colder than sleeping alone, especially when pride quietly builds a wall between two hearts in a small apartment in the United States. When I moved to America, I thought my biggest challenge would be English communication. I worried about job interviews, workplace meetings, fast conversations at the supermarket, and understanding different American accents. I practiced every day. Simple sentences. Clear pronunciation. I'm still improving my English. Could you repeat that, please? Thank you for your patience. I believed language would be the hardest part of building a new life in the U.S. But language was not what almost broke us. The real challenge started at night. We had moved to the United States with hope. Like many immigrant couples, we carried dreams bigger than our savings account. A better career. A safer future. More opportunities. We told each other, this is our fresh start. And in the beginning, everything felt exciting. The wide American highways. The clean grocery stores. The organized systems. The quiet neighborhoods. Even the cold winter air felt like possibility. Then reality settled in. Life in America moves fast. Work expectations are high. Bills arrive every month without emotion. Rent does not care if you are tired. Employers do not slow down because English is your second language. You learn quickly that survival requires focus. So we focused. I worked long hours, trying to prove I deserved my position. I studied English at night to improve my confidence. I wanted to sound clear, professional, capable. I wanted to belong. My spouse did the same, different workplace, different stress, same silent pressure. We were both exhausted. At first, our silence felt normal. Long day? I would ask. Yeah, came the answer. Short. Efficient. Functional. We talked about schedules, tasks, responsibilities. Groceries. Insurance. Emails. Deadlines. Then we stopped talking about feelings. One night, I turned my back to sleep. Not because I was angry. Just tired. The next night, the same. Soon it became a pattern. We slept back to back for months. If you have ever studied psychology, you may know that the human brain has a built-in defense system. When stress stays high for too long, the nervous system shifts into protection mode. It tries to reduce emotional risk. Vulnerability begins to feel dangerous. The brain whispers, stay guarded. Do not expose your weakness. Protect yourself. In marriage, that defense can look like silence. Neither of us wanted to start a conflict. Neither of us wanted to admit fear. So we both stayed strong. Strong on the outside. Quiet on the inside. Here is something interesting. Emotional distance rarely begins with a big fight. It begins with small unsaid sentences. I'm overwhelmed. I'm scared we are drifting apart. I miss how we used to laugh. These are simple English sentences. Easy grammar. Basic vocabulary. But emotionally heavy. During those months, our bedroom became strangely peaceful. Too peaceful. The heater would click on during winter nights. Cars passed outside. Sometimes I could hear steady breathing behind me, so close, yet unreachable. It felt like we were living two parallel lives under one roof in America. And pride became the invisible third person in our bed. Pride asks dangerous questions. Why should I be the one to start? If I reach first, does that mean I care more? If I apologize first, does that mean I am weaker? But pride never builds intimacy. It builds walls. Immigrant life adds another layer. When you relocate to the United States, you are constantly proving yourself, at work, in conversations, in social settings. You are adjusting to American culture, different communication styles, different expectations about independence. Strength becomes your survival strategy. In American culture, independence is respected. Being self-reliant is admired. I absorbed that mindset quickly. I told myself, handle your stress. Don't complain. Be mature. My spouse did the same. Two independent adults. Two responsible professionals. Two emotionally tired people waiting for the other to move first. If you are watching this video to practice English listening, think about how fear works in language learning. You sit in a meeting. You understand most of the conversation. You want to speak. The sentence forms clearly in your mind. But then your brain says, what if you make a mistake? What if your pronunciation sounds strange? So you stay quiet. That quiet feels safe in the moment. But over time, silence becomes distance. Marriage works the same way. Every night, I told myself, tomorrow I will talk. Tomorrow I will turn around and say something honest. Tomorrow arrived many times. And each time, fatigue and pride won. We were not shouting. We were not fighting loudly. From the outside, we looked stable. Responsible. Functional. A hardworking immigrant couple building a life in the U.S. But inside, something fragile was slowly freezing. Looking back, those months were not only about conflict. They were about fear of vulnerability. About two people trying to survive a new country while forgetting to protect the emotional space between them. The distance between our backs was only a few inches. The emotional distance felt like thousands of miles. And every night, the same silent question filled the room. Who will reach first to heal? The American dream begins. The decision to move to the United States did not happen in one dramatic moment. It grew slowly, like a quiet idea that refuses to disappear. We were not running away from anything. We were running toward possibility. Better career growth. A more stable future. A country known for opportunity, innovation, and second chances. The American dream sounds like a cliché until you are standing at an airport holding a one-way ticket and realizing your entire life fits into 2 suitcases. That day felt powerful. We talked about fresh starts as if they were guaranteed. In America, if you work hard, you can build something, we told each other. We watched videos about immigrant success stories in the US. We read blogs about adapting to American culture. We practiced English together at night, sitting at our small table, repeating simple phrases slowly and clearly. Thank you for your time. I'm excited to join the team. I'm looking forward to this opportunity. We laughed at our pronunciation mistakes. We corrected each other gently. There was teamwork in those early days. Landing in the United States felt surreal. The airport signs in English. The organized lines. The polite but efficient officers. Everything moved with structure. Even the air smelled different, colder, sharper. We told ourselves, this is it. Our new chapter. The first weeks were full of adrenaline. Setting up a bank account. Getting a social security number. Learning how health insurance works in America. Understanding credit scores. Renting our first apartment. Every task felt like a small victory. But adaptation is not only paperwork. It is emotional. American culture values independence. People speak directly. Time is money. Schedules are tight. Professional expectations are high. At work, communication is fast and efficient. Meetings move quickly. Jokes fly over your head if your listening skills are not sharp. I realized quickly that English in textbooks is different from real-life English in the United States. Native speakers reduce words. They connect sounds. They speak with rhythm. I had studied grammar for years, but now I needed listening speed, confidence, and cultural awareness. Every evening, I felt mentally tired. Not physically exhausted, mentally drained. Translating in your head all day consumes energy. Trying to understand tone, humor, implied meaning, it requires focus. My spouse experienced the same pressure in a different workplace. New systems. New colleagues. New expectations. We both wanted to perform well. We both wanted to show we were capable professionals in America. So we focused on achievement. We compared progress. My manager said I did well. I understood most of the meeting today. I handled a phone call without asking them to repeat. These were small victories. And they mattered. But behind those victories was silent stress. Research in psychology shows that major life transitions, moving countries, changing careers, adjusting to new cultural environments, significantly increase stress levels. Even positive change triggers anxiety. The brain does not separate excitement from threat very well. It simply recognizes uncertainty. And immigration is uncertainty on a daily basis. You are constantly evaluating yourself. Is my English clear enough? Do I sound confident? Did I misunderstand something? Am I integrating well into American society? That internal self-monitoring never fully stops. At home, instead of releasing that pressure, we carried it with us. In the beginning, we talked about everything. Funny misunderstandings at work. Cultural surprises. The first time someone said, "Let's grab coffee sometime," and we realized it was sometimes just a polite phrase, not a real plan. We laughed about grocery store confusion, about self-checkout machines, about tipping culture. Those conversations felt bonding. But slowly, the tone shifted. Work became more demanding. Expectations increased. We wanted promotions, stability, financial security. We were building credit, building savings, building resumes. Building, building, building. And without noticing, we stopped building emotional connection. Immigrant couples often experience what experts call parallel adaptation. Both partners adapt to the new country at different speeds. One may improve English faster. One may feel more socially confident. One may struggle silently. These differences create subtle imbalance. I began improving my English listening skills quickly because my job required constant meetings. My spouse's workplace environment was different, less verbal, more technical. That created invisible tension. Not competition. Just comparison. In America, achievement is visible. Titles matter. Promotions matter. Confidence matters. At night, instead of sharing vulnerability, we shared updates. Reports. Results. Productivity. I handled a difficult client today. My supervisor praised my presentation. I need to work late tomorrow. The dream that brought us to the United States was still alive. But we were running so fast toward it that we stopped checking if we were still holding hands. Moving to America gave us opportunity. It also amplified our ambition. And ambition, when unmanaged, can quietly replace intimacy. Looking back, I see that our journey to the U.S. was not only geographic relocation. It was psychological transformation. We were becoming stronger, more independent, more capable. But we were also becoming more guarded. The American dream began with hope and teamwork. It slowly evolved into performance and pressure. And somewhere between building careers and building credit scores, we forgot to build space for emotional honesty. The dream had started. But the distance had started too. When love was warm. Before the silent nights, before the back-to-back distance in our apartment in the United States, there was warmth. Real warmth. The kind that makes you believe love alone can survive any country, any language, any pressure. We did not fall in love in America. We carried our love there. In the early days of our relationship, everything felt light. We were curious about the world, about each other, about the future. When we talked about moving to the United States one day, it sounded romantic. Two people building a life from zero. Supporting each other. Growing together. We imagined cozy evenings speaking English slowly, correcting each other's pronunciation, laughing at mistakes. And we actually did that. We would sit at the table with printed dialogues from online English lessons. Simple conversations. Everyday vocabulary. How was your day? It was productive. What are your plans for the weekend? We practiced slowly, clearly, sometimes dramatically. If one of us mispronounced a word, the other would smile and repeat it gently. English was not pressure then. It was teamwork. We watched American movies with subtitles. We paused scenes to repeat short phrases. I appreciate you. I'm proud of you. We'll figure it out. Those sentences felt powerful. Not because of grammar, but but because of meaning. Back then, we used English as a bridge to our shared dream. When we finally decided to immigrate to the US, we promised something important. No matter how busy life became, we would protect our connection. We would talk openly. We would not let stress divide us. We would remember why we started. It sounded mature, responsible, strong. Love, in the beginning, feels invincible. Psychology explains this stage as heightened dopamine and oxytocin activity, chemicals in the brain that create bonding, excitement, and attachment. You overlook flaws. You assume good intentions. You feel safe. We felt safe. Even during the early months in America, when life was chaotic, we still had small rituals. Sunday morning coffee together. Evening walks around the neighborhood. Sharing stories about cultural misunderstandings at work. Laughing about how fast Americans speak on the phone. Those moments mattered. I remember one evening clearly. We were sitting in our small living room, still surrounded by unpacked boxes. Outside, the sky was turning orange. We practiced a simple English sentence together. I'm grateful for you. We repeated it slowly, carefully. Then we said it without practice. It felt genuine. I'm grateful for you, I said. I'm grateful for you too, came the reply. That version of us felt connected. Present. United. So what changed? Nothing dramatic at first. Love did not disappear. It just became quiet under pressure. The transition from warmth to distance is rarely explosive. It is gradual. The brain adapts to routine. The excitement phase naturally declines. This is normal in long-term relationships. Neuroscience shows that over time, the intense chemical surge of early love stabilizes. What replaces it should be deeper attachment, trust, and intentional connection. But intentional connection requires energy. Immigrant life in the United States demands energy constantly. New systems. New social codes. Financial responsibility. Professional growth. We were investing heavily in external stability. And without realizing it, we reduced investment in emotional warmth. Our English practice sessions became shorter. Then irregular. Then non-existent. Not because we stopped caring, but because we were tired. Tired from proving ourselves. Tired from adapting. Tired from translating conversations in our heads all day. Instead of sitting at the table practicing phrases like, I appreciate you, we scrolled separately on our phones. Instead of evening walks, we chose extra work or silent rest. Looking back, I see that the warmth did not vanish suddenly. It slowly faded because we assumed it would maintain itself. That assumption is dangerous. Love, like language, requires repetition. If you stop speaking it, fluency decreases. If you stop practicing appreciation, it becomes awkward to say. If you stop expressing vulnerability, emotional muscles weaken. At some point, saying, I'm proud of you, felt strangely formal. Unnatural. As if we were reading from a script instead of speaking from the heart. And when emotional fluency declines, silence increases. I remember noticing the change one night. We were lying in bed. The room was dark. I almost said something warm, a simple sentence, maybe, "I miss us." But I stopped. The words felt heavy. Vulnerable. Risky. So I turned my back. That was not the first night we slept back to back. But it was the first night I felt the difference clearly. The warmth we once had was still somewhere inside us. But it was buried under responsibility, ambition, and unspoken stress. The painful part is this: we still loved each other. There was no betrayal. No dramatic event. Just two people slowly drifting into emotional self-protection. When love is warm, reaching out feels natural. When love becomes uncertain, reaching out feels like exposure. And somewhere between gratitude and guarded silence, between shared English practice and separate scrolling screens, our once effortless connection began to cool. The dream of building a life in the United States was still alive. But the warmth that brought us there needed attention. And we did not notice in time. When love was not enough. Love is powerful, but under pressure, love alone can feel surprisingly fragile, especially when two ambitious immigrants are trying to survive and succeed in the United States. We still cared about each other. That was never the question. The problem was not the absence of love. The problem was exhaustion, misunderstanding, and the quiet growth of ego. In America, life moves with speed and expectation. Performance matters. Time is scheduled. Results are measured. At work, I had to speak clearly, confidently, and efficiently. There was little room for hesitation. My English had improved, but every conversation still required focus. I listened carefully to tone, to phrasing, to subtle meaning. By the end of each day, my brain felt like it had run a marathon. My spouse carried a different kind of pressure. Different workplace. Different stress. Same ambition. We both wanted stability. We both wanted success. We both wanted to prove that moving to the US was the right decision. That shared ambition slowly turned into shared tension. Small misunderstandings began appearing. Not dramatic fights. Just friction. You seem distant. I'm just tired. You don't talk like before. There's nothing to talk about. Those sentences sound simple in English. Basic vocabulary. Clear grammar. But emotionally, they were loaded. Psychologists explain that when stress accumulates without emotional release, partners begin interpreting neutral behavior as negative. It is called negative sentiment override. The brain becomes biased toward threat detection. A short answer feels like rejection. Silence feels intentional. Neutral tone feels cold. I noticed this happening to us. If my spouse came home quiet, I assumed something was wrong. If I focused on my phone after dinner, it was interpreted as indifference. Neither of us intended harm. But stress distorted perception. Immigrant couples face unique challenges. Cultural adjustment does not happen at the same pace. One partner may adapt socially faster. One may struggle internally but hide it. Instead of discussing those differences openly, we compared silently. Comparison is dangerous in marriage. I started measuring effort. I work long hours. I am improving my English. I am trying. My spouse likely had similar thoughts. When two people focus on their own sacrifice, empathy decreases. The phrase, "love is enough," sounds comforting. But love without communication becomes assumption. Love without vulnerability becomes pride. We stopped sharing fear. I was afraid of failing professionally in the United States. Afraid that my accent would limit growth. Afraid of being seen as less competent. But instead of saying, "I feel insecure," I said nothing. My spouse carried fears too. Financial pressure. Career uncertainty. Cultural isolation. But instead of saying, "I feel overwhelmed," there was silence. Silence is deceptive. It feels peaceful. It avoids conflict. But it also blocks intimacy. In American culture, independence is highly valued. You handle your own stress. You manage your own emotions. That mindset influenced us deeply. We tried to solve problems individually, not relationally. At night, the distance grew. We still shared a bed. We still lived under the same roof. But emotionally, we began operating like roommates. Conversations became transactional. Did you pay the electricity bill? What time is your meeting? Don't forget the appointment. Practical communication replaced emotional connection. There is a psychological concept called emotional bids, small attempts to connect. A smile. A question. A touch. Research shows that healthy couples respond positively to these bids most of the time. Distressed couples ignore or reject them. Looking back, I realize we missed many emotional bids. One evening, my spouse said, "Work has been stressful." I responded with advice instead of empathy. You just need better time management. Logical. Efficient. Cold. Another time, I tried to share frustration about my English fluency in a meeting. The reply was short. "You'll improve." Encouraging, maybe. But distant. Neither of us felt heard. The ego grew quietly. Ego does not always shout. Sometimes it whispers, "I'm doing my best." Why can't you see that? Ego focuses on fairness. On who tries harder. On who sacrifices more. But marriage is not a competition. One night, after a minor disagreement about finances, we went to bed without resolution. The room was dark. The tension was thick. I could feel words trapped in my chest. Apologies. Explanations. Vulnerability. Instead, I turned away. My spouse turned away too. That physical movement symbolized something deeper. Not rejection. Not hatred. Just defense. Defense protects the self. It does not protect the relationship. Love was still present. But it was buried under fatigue, comparison, and unspoken fear. We believed the other should understand automatically. We believed love should be intuitive. But love requires translation, especially in a new country, in a new culture, in a new phase of life. The hardest truth was this: neither of us wanted to lose. Not the argument. Not the pride. Not the position of being right. And so we both lost something more important. Connection. We had crossed oceans to build a future in the United States. We had learned new systems, new skills, new language patterns. But we were failing at something simpler. Saying what we actually felt. Love was there. But love, without courage, was not enough. Nights of turning away. Darkness has a strange way of amplifying distance. In daylight, you can hide behind schedules, responsibilities, and polite conversations. At night, when the lights go off and the room becomes quiet, there is nowhere to hide from what is missing. Our bedroom in the United States was not large. A modest apartment. Neutral walls. Soft carpet. A heater that clicked on during winter. From the outside, it looked like a normal home of a hard-working immigrant couple building a life in America. Inside that room, for months, we slept back to back. It did not begin as a dramatic decision. No one announced, "I'm turning away from you." It happened gradually. One stressful day led to one quiet night. One unresolved disagreement led to another evening without conversation. Over time, turning away became routine. Routines are powerful. The brain loves repetition. Neuroscience shows that repeated behaviors form neural pathways. The more you do something, the more automatic it becomes. Even emotional distance can become a habit. At first, I noticed the physical space. Our backs barely touching. Then I noticed the emotional space. The silence was not peaceful anymore. It was heavy. During the day, we functioned well. We went to work. We spoke English confidently in meetings. We navigated American systems, insurance, taxes, deadlines, credit reports. We handled responsibilities like responsible adults. At night, we avoided vulnerability like strangers. There is something symbolic about sleeping back to back. The position protects the chest and face. It shields the most vulnerable parts of the body. Psychologists often explain that body language reflects emotional states. Turning away can signal self-protection. We were protecting ourselves from disappointment. If I did not reach out, I could not be rejected. If I did not speak, I could not be misunderstood. If I stayed silent, I could maintain dignity. But dignity without intimacy feels lonely. Some nights, I stared into the darkness and replayed conversations in my head. I analyzed small comments from earlier that day. Tone. Word choice. Facial expression. Stress makes the brain hyper-aware of potential threats. It searches for evidence of disconnection. Meanwhile, my spouse likely did the same behind me. Two people lying inches apart. Two separate internal dialogues. No shared words. Immigrant life in the U.S. adds complexity to emotional conflict. When you relocate, your support system shrinks. Extended family is far away. Close friends are in different time zones. Work becomes your primary social environment. That means your spouse is not only your partner, but also your main emotional anchor. When that anchor feels unstable, anxiety increases. Research shows that prolonged emotional tension elevates cortisol levels, the stress hormone. High cortisol affects sleep quality. I started sleeping lightly. Small noises woke me up. My body felt tense even when I was still. And yet, I refused to turn around. Pride is subtle at night. It does not shout. It whispers rationalizations. It's too late to talk. Tomorrow will be better. This is not a big issue. They should notice first. The mind becomes a lawyer defending ego. Some evenings, I almost reached out physically. A simple touch on the shoulder. A small movement closer. But hesitation froze me. What if the gesture was not returned? What if the response was cold? Rejection feels larger in silence. In language learning, there is a similar fear. You prepare a sentence in English. You know the grammar is correct. But you hesitate before speaking because you fear sounding awkward. That hesitation creates missed opportunities. In relationships, the cost is higher. One night stands out clearly in my memory. Outside, snow was falling. The apartment felt colder than usual. We had barely spoken after dinner. Work stress had been intense for both of us that week. I lay there listening to the heater cycle on and off. I wanted to say something simple. Are we okay? 3 words. Basic English. Easy pronunciation. But those 3 words felt heavier than any professional presentation I had given in America. Instead of speaking, I shifted slightly further away. That movement, small as it was, carried meaning. It said, I choose safety over connection tonight. Months passed like that. From the outside, nothing dramatic happened. No shouting matches. No visible crisis. If someone had visited, they would have seen 2 polite adults living responsibly in the United States. But emotional erosion does not always make noise. The hardest part was realizing that love still existed. I could feel it. It had not disappeared. It was simply buried under fatigue and fear. I began questioning everything. Are we drifting permanently? Is this what long-term marriage becomes? Is this the price of ambition and adaptation in a new country? At work, I continued improving my English communication skills. I spoke more confidently. I volunteered ideas. I received positive feedback. Professionally, I was progressing. Personally, I was retreating. The contrast was painful. Success outside. Silence inside. Every night, the same ritual. Lights off. Bodies turning. Words unspoken. And every night, the same unanswered question lingered in the dark. Who will be brave enough to turn first? Who reaches first? Pride rarely announces itself as pride. It disguises itself as fairness, logic, even self-respect. And in our apartment in the United States, pride quietly became the 3rd person in our marriage. By this point, the routine was established. We worked hard. We improved our English communication skills. We handled responsibilities like disciplined adults building a life in America. And at night, we turned away from each other with mechanical precision. The question was no longer whether we felt distance. The question was, who would reach first to heal? On the surface, this sounds simple. If something feels wrong, talk about it. If you miss your partner, say it. If you feel hurt, express it. But psychology explains why it is rarely that easy. When humans experience emotional pain, the brain activates similar neural pathways as physical pain. Rejection, criticism, and disconnection trigger the same alarm system. The brain does not want to experience that pain again. So it builds defenses. One common defense is avoidance. Avoidance feels safer than vulnerability. If you do not initiate, you cannot be rejected. If you do not apologize, you cannot lose status. If you do not admit weakness, you cannot be judged. In marriage, that defense creates a silent competition. I remember lying in bed one night, staring into darkness, analyzing the situation as if it were a business problem. Logical. Strategic. Detached. If I turn first, what does that mean? Will it create balance or imbalance? Will I be seen as more invested? Those questions reveal ego at work. Ego focuses on power dynamics. Who cares more? Who sacrifices more? Who tries harder? But love is not a negotiation contract. It is a continuous exchange of trust. Immigrant life in the U.S. intensified this internal struggle. Every day at work, I had to project competence. I had to speak clearly in English, participate confidently in meetings, and demonstrate capability. Confidence became my survival tool in American professional culture. At home, I carried that same armor. Confidence, when overused, turns into emotional rigidity. My spouse likely carried similar armor. Different environment, same survival instinct. We were both protecting our sense of worth. Both trying to avoid feeling small. There is a concept in relationship psychology called attachment style. When stress increases, people often lean into patterns formed earlier in life. Some withdraw to self-regulate. Others pursue reassurance. In our case, stress pushed us toward withdrawal. Two withdrawers create a silent battlefield. No shouting. No dramatic scenes. Just distance. And distance feels justified when pride is involved. One afternoon, I watched a short video about communication in American marriages. The speaker said something that stayed with me: the person who reaches first is not weaker. They are emotionally stronger. That sentence disturbed me. Emotionally stronger. Strength, in my mind, meant independence. Not needing reassurance. Managing stress alone. But emotional strength might actually mean the opposite: the willingness to risk rejection for connection. The brain resists this idea. Risk triggers fear. Fear triggers protection. Protection triggers silence. And so the cycle continues. I began noticing how this pattern showed up in other areas of life. In English conversations, I had learned that fluency improves through mistakes. The more I spoke, the more confident I became. Waiting for perfect grammar only delayed growth. Why was I applying courage at work but hesitation at home? One evening after a particularly long day, I came home mentally exhausted. I had led a meeting entirely in English. I had answered difficult questions. I felt proud professionally. But when I entered the apartment, the emotional air felt heavy again. We exchanged practical updates. Dinner was quiet. Dishes were washed. Lights turned off. And there we were. Back to back. In that darkness, I recognized something clearly. We were both waiting for certainty. Certainty that the other person still cared. Certainty that vulnerability would be met with warmth, not indifference. But certainty rarely arrives before action. Research in behavioral psychology shows that change often follows behavior, not the other way around. You do not wait to feel confident before acting confident. You act, and confidence builds afterward. Maybe healing works the same way. Maybe connection does not begin with feeling safe. Maybe it begins with choosing courage. The longer we waited, the more awkward it felt to break the pattern. Silence compounds over time. Each unspoken night increases emotional inertia. I realized something uncomfortable. I was not only afraid of rejection. I was afraid of responsibility. If I reached first, I would be choosing growth over ego. That requires humility. Humility is difficult when you are building identity in a new country. As immigrants in America, we constantly rebuild self-worth through achievement. Letting go of pride at home felt counterintuitive. But pride was not protecting our marriage. It was suffocating it. In that moment, the question shifted. Not who should reach first, but who is brave enough to. The difference is subtle but powerful. Should implies obligation. Brave implies choice. Lying there in the quiet, I understood something for the first time. Waiting was also a decision. And if we continued waiting, distance would eventually feel normal. The night felt still. The heater clicked softly. Snow pressed against the window. And the question remained, sharper than before. Who will move first, and when? A simple English sentence. Change did not begin with a dramatic speech. It did not start with a perfect apology or a long emotional confession. It started with one simple English sentence. By that time, the silence between us had become predictable. Work. Dinner. Phones. Lights off. Turning away. The routine felt almost mechanical, like brushing your teeth or locking the door. Familiar. Cold. But something inside me was shifting. At work in the United States, I had learned an important lesson about communication skills. Clarity beats complexity. In meetings, the most effective sentences were often the simplest ones. Not long explanations. Not complicated vocabulary. Just clear, direct language. I need help with this. I don't understand. Let's try a different approach. Simple sentences created solutions. Why was I avoiding simplicity at home? That night, the room felt no different from other nights. The heater hummed. Outside, distant traffic moved through the winter air. We had barely spoken after dinner. Nothing dramatic had happened. Just quiet tension. I lay there facing the wall, staring at faint shadows. My heart was beating faster than usual. The brain interprets emotional risk as physical threat. Even preparing to speak felt like stepping onto a stage without rehearsal. But I remembered something from learning English fluency. Hesitation grows when you overthink. So instead of constructing a perfect emotional speech, I chose something small. I turned slightly. Not fully. Just enough to reduce the physical distance. And I said, slowly, clearly, I miss us. 3 words. Not dramatic. Not accusatory. Not strategic. Just honest. There was a pause. In that pause, my mind raced. Did I sound weak? Did I sound needy? Did I sound childish? Emotional vulnerability often triggers immediate self-judgment. Then I heard movement behind me. A small shift. And then a quiet response. I miss us too. That sentence did not solve everything. It did not erase months of distance. But it cracked something open. Psychologists explain that vulnerability often invites reciprocity. When one person lowers defenses, the other feels safer doing the same. Emotional courage can be contagious. We did not suddenly turn into a romantic movie scene. There were no dramatic tears. But we both turned toward each other slightly. Not fully face to face. Just enough to feel presence. The physical shift mattered. Body language influences emotional state. Studies show that proximity and gentle touch can reduce stress hormones and increase oxytocin, the bonding hormone. Even small physical alignment signals safety to the nervous system. That night, we did not have a long conversation. But we had something we had not had in months, acknowledgement. I've been tired, my spouse said quietly. I know, I replied. I didn't know how to say it. Me neither. Short sentences. Simple grammar. Honest meaning. In American professional culture, communication is often direct and efficient. Ironically, I had mastered that style at work but neglected it at home. I realized that emotional clarity requires the same courage as professional communication. Over the next few days, we experimented with something new. We agreed to keep sentences simple. Instead of building arguments, we expressed feelings directly. I feel overwhelmed. I feel pressure at work. I feel distant sometimes. Notice the pattern, I feel. Using I statements reduces defensiveness. Relationship research consistently shows that blaming language triggers resistance, while personal expression invites empathy. It felt awkward at first. Almost unnatural. After months of silence, even small emotional honesty required effort. But like practicing English pronunciation, repetition improved fluency. We also reintroduced a small ritual from earlier days, short English conversations at night. Not as a lesson. Not as homework. Just connection. How was your day, really? What stressed you today? What made you smile? Slow. Clear. Intentional. Those conversations became bridges. One evening, I admitted something I had hidden for months. I'm afraid I'm not good enough here. Saying that out loud felt heavier than any business presentation I had delivered in the United States. The response was not criticism. It was understanding. I feel that too sometimes. That mutual admission shifted the dynamic completely. We were not opponents protecting ego. We were partners navigating stress. The difference was profound. Looking back, I see that the breakthrough did not require perfect language skills or dramatic gestures. It required willingness to speak before feeling completely safe. Healing did not begin with certainty. It began with one person choosing to turn slightly and say something real. I miss us. That sentence became a turning point. Not because it was eloquent, but because it was sincere. In language learning, progress accelerates when you stop fearing mistakes and start using the language daily. In marriage, healing accelerates when you stop protecting pride and start expressing truth. That night, we did not fix everything. But for the first time in months, we were no longer back to back. We were facing the possibility of connection again. And sometimes, that is enough to begin. What America taught me. Healing did not happen overnight. One honest sentence opened the door, but walking through that door required intention. Living in the United States slowly taught me something unexpected about marriage, communication, and emotional responsibility. In American culture, there is a strong emphasis on direct communication. People are encouraged to express boundaries clearly, to say what they mean, to advocate for themselves. At work, this directness is considered professional. In therapy culture, which is widely accepted in the US, emotional awareness is not seen as weakness but maturity. At first, I only applied those lessons professionally. In meetings, I learned to say, I need clarification. In emails, I wrote, I would appreciate feedback. In presentations, I stated opinions confidently. But at home, I still filtered emotions through pride. After that first night when I said, I miss us, something shifted in how I observed American life around me. I started paying attention to how couples communicated. Friends spoke openly about relationship challenges. Colleagues mentioned marriage counseling without embarrassment. Podcasts discussed emotional intelligence like it was a normal life skill. In many parts of the world, couples struggle silently. In the US, there is more public conversation about mental health, attachment styles, and communication tools. That cultural difference began influencing me. I remember listening to a podcast during my commute. The speaker said, conflict is not the problem. Avoidance is. That sentence stayed with me all day. Avoidance had been our strategy for months. We were not fighting loudly. We were avoiding vulnerability quietly. Research in relationship psychology shows that couples who address conflict early, even imperfectly, have stronger long-term stability. Suppressed frustration does not disappear, it accumulates. The brain stores unresolved tension like unfinished tasks, increasing stress. America taught me that emotional maintenance is as important as financial maintenance. You do not ignore a leaking pipe and hope it fixes itself. You repair it early. Marriage works the same way. So we began small experiments. Once a week, we set aside 30 minutes with no phones. No television. Just conversation. Not dramatic therapy sessions. Just intentional check-ins. How are you feeling about work this week? Is there anything you need from me right now? Are we okay? Simple, direct, honest. At first, those questions felt formal, almost rehearsed. But repetition made them natural. Emotional fluency, like language fluency, improves with practice. Living and working in the United States also exposed us to diverse relationship models. Different couples handled stress differently. Some prioritized career heavily. Others prioritized family time. Observing those differences helped us reflect on our own values. We realized something important: ambition had silently replaced connection as our primary focus. There is nothing wrong with ambition. The U.S. rewards drive, innovation, and resilience. But ambition without emotional balance can create isolation. Success at work cannot compensate for silence at home. One evening, during our weekly check-in, my spouse said something that changed the tone of our healing process. "I don't need you to solve my stress. I just need you to understand it." That distinction mattered deeply. Previously, when one of us shared frustration, the other offered solutions. Advice. Efficiency. Strategy. We treated emotions like problems to fix. But empathy is not the same as problem solving. Psychologists explain that emotional validation reduces stress hormones more effectively than advice. Feeling understood calms the nervous system. It signals safety. So we practiced listening differently. When one person spoke, the other did not interrupt. No quick solutions. No corrections. Just presence. That sounds hard. I can see why you feel that way. Thank you for telling me. Those phrases may sound simple, even basic. But they create connection. America also taught me the value of personal responsibility in relationships. Therapy culture emphasizes that each person is accountable for their emotional reactions. Instead of saying, "You make me feel distant," we learn to say, "I feel distant when we don't talk." The shift from blame to ownership reduces defensiveness. It invites collaboration. We also reintroduced physical closeness intentionally. Small gestures. Sitting closer on the couch. A hand on the shoulder. Not forced intimacy. Just gentle reminders of partnership. Gradually, the nights changed. We did not always fall asleep facing each other. But we no longer turned away automatically. The routine of distance was replaced by conscious choice. Living in the United States taught me that healing is not dramatic. It is consistent. It is scheduled. It is maintained. Just like improving English listening skills requires daily exposure, improving marriage requires daily attention. The biggest lesson America gave me was this: strength is not silent endurance. Strength is proactive communication. Reaching first is not weakness. It is leadership. And once we stopped seeing vulnerability as loss, healing began to feel less frightening. The back-to-back nights became less frequent. The silence became shorter. And the space between us began to feel smaller, not physically, but emotionally. America did not fix our marriage, but it taught us how to take responsibility for it. Small steps back to us. Healing rarely arrives as a dramatic breakthrough. It usually looks ordinary, almost unimpressive from the outside. In our case, rebuilding connection in the United States did not involve grand romantic gestures. It involved small, consistent steps repeated daily. After we began speaking honestly again, we made a quiet agreement: no more waiting for the perfect moment to connect. Waiting had cost us months. Action, even imperfect action, had reopened the door. The first step was structured time. It sounds unromantic, almost clinical, to schedule connection. But busy immigrant life in America runs on calendars. Work meetings are scheduled. Performance reviews are scheduled. Even doctor appointments are scheduled weeks in advance. If something matters, it goes on the calendar. So we scheduled us. 30 minutes every Sunday evening. No phones. No laptops. No television. Just conversation. Not forced positivity. Not problem solving. Just presence. At first, the silence during those sessions felt awkward. Months of emotional distance do not disappear instantly. But consistency reduces awkwardness. The brain adapts to new patterns just as it adapts to old ones. We followed a simple structure. One thing that stressed me this week. One thing I appreciated about you this week. One thing I need next week. Clear. Direct. Balanced. The appreciation part felt especially powerful. During our back-to-back months, we had stopped acknowledging each other's efforts. We assumed the other person should already know. I appreciated how you handled that phone call with the bank. I appreciated that you stayed up late to help me review my presentation. Small recognitions created warmth. Psychology research shows that gratitude increases relationship satisfaction significantly. Expressing appreciation activates reward pathways in the brain, reinforcing positive connection. It shifts focus from deficiency to value. The second step was physical proximity without pressure. We did not force dramatic intimacy. Instead, we reintroduced simple contact. Sitting closer on the couch. A brief hug before leaving for work. A hand resting lightly on the other's back in the kitchen. Physical touch regulates the nervous system. Studies indicate that safe touch lowers cortisol and increases oxytocin, promoting bonding and reducing stress. After months of subtle tension, our bodies needed reassurance as much as our words did. The third step involved our original bridge, English. We returned to something we used to enjoy before stress overshadowed it. Short nightly English conversations, not formal study sessions, just light practice. What was the most challenging part of your day? What made you proud today? What are you worried about tomorrow? Speaking slowly, clearly, intentionally. This served two purposes. It improved our real-life English fluency in the United States, and it strengthened emotional expression. English became a shared tool again instead of a source of pressure. Interestingly, expressing vulnerability in a second language sometimes felt easier. English created slight emotional distance, reducing intensity. Saying, "I feel insecure," in English felt less overwhelming than saying it in our native language. That subtle buffer helped us speak more openly. The fourth step was reframing conflict. Instead of asking, "Who is right?" we began asking, "What are we protecting?" Usually, the answer was fear. Fear of failure. Fear of financial instability. Fear of losing identity in a new country. Understanding that fear, not malice, was driving tension changed everything. One evening, we revisited a recurring argument about career priorities. Instead of defending positions, we explored underlying concerns. "I'm afraid that if I slow down at work, I'll fall behind. I'm afraid that if we only focus on work, we'll drift apart again." Those admissions softened the atmosphere immediately. Behavioral psychology emphasizes incremental change. Big transformations are unstable. Small, repeatable behaviors build sustainable patterns. That principle applied perfectly to us. We did not attempt to become the perfect couple overnight. We aimed for 5% improvement each week. Slightly more listening. Slightly less defensiveness. Slightly more appreciation. Over time, those percentages compounded. The nights shifted gradually. Some evenings we still felt tired. Some conversations were still uncomfortable. Healing is not linear. But the automatic turning away stopped. We began falling asleep facing each other more often. Not always talking. Sometimes just existing in quiet without tension. That difference is subtle but profound. Silence used to signal distance. Now silence felt calm. The final step was shared vision. We revisited why we moved to the United States in the first place. Not just for career advancement. Not just for financial stability. But for growth, together. We asked each other, what kind of marriage do we want 5 years from now? What kind of environment do we want to create if we have children? What example of partnership do we want to model? Those forward-looking questions reconnected us to purpose. Immigrant life can narrow focus to survival. Bills. Promotions. Deadlines. But long-term partnership requires intentional design, not just endurance. Gradually, warmth returned. Not the intense dopamine rush of early love. Something steadier. More mature. Built on honesty instead of assumption. The back-to-back nights became memories instead of routine. And we learned something powerful. Healing does not require dramatic speeches. It requires daily, small, brave steps back toward each other. This is not just another motivational speech. What if the only thing standing between you and the life you want isn't talent, luck, or timing, but one decision you're afraid to make. This is the turning point. If you've watched this far, you're not here by accident. You're here because something inside you refuses to settle. And today, we're locking in the mindset that separates people who almost made it from people who actually do. Let's be real. Quitting feels justified sometimes. When progress is slow. When nobody notices your effort. When you're exhausted and questioning whether any of this is worth it. The modern world glorifies overnight success, but hides the years of invisible struggle behind it. Social media shows the highlight reel, not the grind. But here's the truth about personal growth, self-discipline, and success habits. The breakthrough almost always happens right after the moment you feel like giving up. Most people stop at the dip. The dip is that uncomfortable space where the excitement fades and the results haven't shown up yet. It's where doubt gets loud. It's where distractions feel more attractive than discipline. And it's where 90% of people quietly walk away from their goals. Winners stay. Not because they feel motivated every day. Not because they're fearless. But because they made a decision that quitting is no longer an option. Motivation is emotional. Discipline is structural. If you rely on motivation, you'll only move when you feel good. And nobody feels good every single day. But when you build daily habits for success, when you commit to small consistent action, you remove the emotional debate. You don't ask yourself if you feel like it. You just execute. This is the foundation of long-term success mindset training. Look at high performers in any field: business, sports, art, content creation. The difference is rarely intelligence. It's consistency under pressure. It's the ability to keep showing up when it's boring, uncomfortable, or inconvenient. And here's something powerful: you don't need to feel confident to act confidently. Confidence is a result, not a prerequisite. Take action first. Confidence follows proof. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, your identity shifts slightly. You start seeing yourself as someone who finishes. Someone who pushes through. Someone who doesn't fold when things get hard. Identity drives behavior more than goals ever will. If your identity is, "I'm trying," you'll stop when it gets hard. If your identity is, "I finish what I start," your behavior aligns automatically. That's why building mental toughness is less about hype and more about alignment. Ask yourself, who am I becoming through this process? Because success is not just about achieving something external. It's about transforming internally. The discipline you build. The resilience you develop. The standards you raise. Those stay with you long after one specific goal is achieved. And let's talk about standards. You don't get what you want. You get what you tolerate. If you tolerate procrastination, you'll live in delay. If you tolerate excuses, you'll live in limitation. If you tolerate mediocrity, you'll never experience your full potential. Raising your standards changes everything. It changes how you spend your time. It changes who you allow into your circle. It changes what you say yes to and what you walk away from. Personal development is not just adding new habits, it's removing what no longer serves you. This is where real growth begins. There will be days you feel invisible. Days you feel behind. Days when someone else's success triggers comparison. In those moments, remember this: comparison kills progress. Your timeline is not their timeline. Some people start earlier. Some people have advantages. Some people appear to rise faster. None of that changes your path. What matters is that you stay in the game long enough for your effort to compound. Compounding effort is powerful. Small improvements daily may look insignificant in the moment. But over months and years, they create massive transformation. One extra hour of focused work. One healthier meal. One difficult conversation handled maturely. One more rep, one more page. One more video. Stack enough of those, and your life shifts. The problem is most people underestimate what they can do in 5 years and overestimate what they can do in 5 days. Sustainable success is boring in the short term and unbelievable in the long term. So if you're tired, rest, but don't quit. If you're discouraged, adjust, but don't abandon the mission. If you're doubting yourself, remember why you started. You started because something inside you wanted more. More growth. More freedom. More impact. That desire wasn't random. It was a signal. And signals should not be ignored. Every person you admire once stood where you stand, uncertain, inexperienced, questioning. The only difference is they kept going long enough to become who they are now. You are closer than you think. Not because success is guaranteed, but because persistence narrows the gap every single day. Every time you refuse to quit, you increase the odds. Every time you push through discomfort, you expand your capacity. Hard things build strong people. And strong people build meaningful lives. At some point, you have to decide that your future self is worth fighting for. That the version of you who is disciplined, confident, and successful deserves the temporary discomfort you feel today. No one is coming to rescue you. No perfect moment is arriving. There is no magical sign that it's time. This is the sign. Right here. Right now. Make the decision. Not emotionally. Not dramatically. Calmly. Clearly. Decisively. Decide that you are done negotiating with your excuses. Decide that you are done shrinking your potential to stay comfortable. Decide that quitting is no longer part of your vocabulary. The world does not reward intention. It rewards execution. And execution begins with one small, committed action today. Send the email. Start the workout. Publish the content. Study the material. Make the call. Take the step. Momentum is built, not found. You don't need to see the entire staircase. You only need to take the next step. Over time, those steps form a path. That path becomes progress. That progress becomes results. And those results become proof. Proof that you were capable all along. So if you've been waiting for clarity, here it is. If you've been waiting for motivation, create it through action. If you've been waiting for permission, consider this it. Your story doesn't end in the dip. It continues through discipline. And it peaks through persistence. Stay in the game. Because the life you want is still possible. But only if you refuse to walk away. What if the version of you 5 years from now is begging you not to quit today? Is about legacy, long-term vision, and the invisible contract you sign with your future every single day. This is where motivation turns into mission. This is where temporary emotion transforms into permanent identity. And if you're still watching, it's because deep down, you know you're meant for more than average. Let's talk about long-term success mindset. Most people think success is about achieving a goal, hitting a revenue number, losing weight, building a following, landing the dream job. But real success is about who you become while pursuing those goals. It's about personal growth, mental toughness, and daily discipline stacked over time. Short-term comfort is seductive. Scrolling is easier than studying. Sleeping in is easier than training. Avoiding the hard conversation is easier than leading it. And every small decision feels harmless in isolation. But repeated choices create identity. Your habits are casting votes for the person you are becoming. Every time you choose discipline over distraction, you cast a vote for a stronger identity. Every time you follow through when no one is watching, you reinforce self-respect. And self-respect is the foundation of confidence. Confidence isn't loud. It's stable. It's built quietly through consistency. Through showing up on days when you're tired. Through keeping promises to yourself. Through doing the work even when there's no applause. That's the difference between external validation and internal alignment. When your motivation depends on recognition, you become fragile. But when your drive comes from alignment with your values, you become unstoppable. High-performance psychology shows that intrinsic motivation outlasts hype every single time. Ask yourself, what do I stand for? Not what do I want to achieve, but what do I stand for? Do you stand for growth? For excellence? For integrity? For resilience? When your actions align with your standards, you build a powerful internal reputation. And that internal reputation determines your external results. You can't outperform your identity forever. Eventually, your habits will reveal who you truly are. That's why self-discipline is not punishment. It's self-construction. You're building structure around your potential. And let's address something uncomfortable, fear of failure. Fear convinces you to delay action. It whispers that you're not ready, not qualified, not talented enough. But readiness is rarely a prerequisite for success. Readiness is often created through action. Clarity comes from movement, not overthinking. The longer you wait for perfect conditions, the more momentum you lose. Successful people are not fearless. They are decisive despite fear. They understand that courage is built in motion. Perfectionism is just fear wearing a fancy outfit. Waiting for perfect timing keeps you stuck. Posting imperfectly, launching imperfectly, starting imperfectly, that builds experience. And experience builds competence. Competence builds confidence. This is how growth compounds. Let's talk about resilience training for real life. Life will test you. Unexpected bills. Rejection emails. Projects that fail. Plans that collapse. There will be moments when your effort doesn't match the outcome. In those moments, your reaction defines your trajectory. You can interpret failure as identity, or as feedback. If you interpret it as identity, you shrink. If you interpret it as feedback, you adapt. High achievers treat obstacles as data. They analyze, adjust, and continue. They don't attach their self-worth to temporary outcomes. And neither should you. You are not your latest mistake. You are not your slowest month. You are not the opinion of someone who never tried. You are a work in progress with the capacity to evolve. Now think bigger. What kind of example are you setting for the people watching you? Your children. Your siblings. Your friends. Your audience. Even strangers observing quietly. Leadership begins with self-leadership. When you push through hard seasons, you give others permission to do the same. Energy is contagious. So is discipline. So is mediocrity. Choose carefully what you spread. There is something powerful about becoming the person who doesn't break under pressure. Not because life gets easier, but because you get stronger. Mental strength is developed like a muscle. Repetition under resistance. Every challenge you survive increases your capacity. And capacity determines opportunity. When opportunity arrives, it rarely announces itself loudly. It shows up disguised as responsibility. As risk. As something slightly beyond your comfort zone. If you've built discipline, you're ready. If you've trained your mindset, you step forward instead of shrinking back. That's preparation meeting opportunity. Too many people want opportunity without preparation. They want the stage without the rehearsals. The spotlight without the practice. But preparation is what allows you to handle success without self-sabotage. Because success amplifies who you already are. If you're disciplined, success expands your impact. If you're careless, success magnifies your weaknesses. That's why this journey of personal development matters long before the results show up. You are preparing for a level you haven't reached yet. Stay focused. Distraction is expensive. It costs time, energy, and attention. And attention is your most valuable asset in the digital age. Guard it. Protect your focus like it's currency, because it is. Deep work creates uncommon results. Shallow effort creates average outcomes. If you want uncommon results, you must commit to uncommon focus. And here's the truth about sustainable success: it's rarely dramatic. It's structured. It's routine. It's built on systems. Morning routines. Weekly reviews. Clear goals. Non-negotiable standards. Structure creates freedom. When your day has intention, your mind has clarity. When your standards are clear, your decisions become easier. You eliminate the daily debate. You execute. Execution builds momentum. Momentum builds belief. Belief builds transformation. At some point, you have to stop doubting and start deciding. Decide that your future is worth the effort. Decide that comfort is no longer your priority. Decide that growth, discipline, and impact matter more than temporary ease. No one else can make that decision for you. But once you do, everything shifts. You wake up with purpose. You move with direction. You speak with conviction. You act with alignment. And over time, your results reflect your standards. 5 years from now, you will either thank yourself, or wish you had started sooner. So start now. Stay consistent. Embrace discomfort. Build habits. Strengthen your mindset. And refuse to quit. Because the life you're building isn't just about achievement. It's about becoming someone you're proud to be. Is not about hype. What if this is the last time you ever question your own potential? It's about final alignment. It's about drawing a line between who you used to be and who you're choosing to become. If you've made it this far, you're not casually consuming content. You're searching for change. And change begins with a decision backed by action. Let's lock in the ultimate success mindset. Everything you want: financial freedom, personal growth, confidence, discipline, impact, sits on the other side of sustained effort. Not intense effort for a week. Not motivation for a month. Sustained effort over years. The uncomfortable truth? Most people don't fail because they're incapable. They fail because they stop. They stop when results are slow. They stop when progress feels invisible. They stop when it gets repetitive. But repetition is the gateway to mastery. Every expert was once a beginner who refused to quit. Every high performer built daily habits long before anyone noticed. That's the part social media rarely shows. The early mornings. The lonely nights. The boring practice sessions. The small improvements no one claps for. Invisible effort creates visible success. And here's where long-term personal development separates from temporary motivation. Motivation gets you started. Systems keep you going. If you rely only on emotion, your progress will fluctuate. If you rely on structure, your growth compounds. Build systems for success. Set a non-negotiable wake-up time. Schedule deep work sessions. Plan workouts. Track progress. Review goals weekly. These aren't restrictions. They're frameworks for freedom. Structure removes decision fatigue and increases execution. High performance is rarely accidental. It's engineered. Now let's address self-doubt directly. Self-doubt doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're stretching beyond your comfort zone. Growth triggers uncertainty because you're entering unfamiliar territory. That's not a warning sign. That's evidence of expansion. Comfort keeps you stagnant. Discomfort builds capacity. Every time you push through discomfort, whether it's a hard workout, a difficult project, or a bold decision, you expand your tolerance for challenge. And tolerance for challenge determines the size of your life. Small tolerance, small life. Large tolerance, large life. Your mindset is the multiplier. Two people can face the same obstacle. One sees it as proof they should stop. The other sees it as proof they're on the edge of growth. The obstacle is neutral. Interpretation determines outcome. Choose empowering interpretations. Instead of saying, "This is too hard," shift to, "This is building me." Instead of thinking, "I'm behind," think, "I'm progressing at my pace." Reframing isn't denial. It's strategic thinking. Mental strength is trained through perspective. And perspective shapes action. Let's talk about delayed gratification. In a world of instant entertainment and instant feedback, patience feels unnatural. But meaningful achievement requires long-term focus. Investing time without immediate reward. Practicing without applause. Showing up without recognition. Delayed gratification builds elite discipline. The ability to sacrifice short-term pleasure for long-term gain is a competitive advantage. While others chase comfort, you build capacity. While others scroll, you study. While others hesitate, you execute. Over time, the gap widens. Not because you're superior. Because you stayed consistent. Consistency beats intensity. Intense bursts of effort followed by burnout create cycles. Steady, sustainable discipline creates progress. That's why daily habits matter more than occasional breakthroughs. Breakthroughs are built on routine. And routine is built on identity. When you see yourself as disciplined, you act disciplined. When you see yourself as resilient, you persist. Identity-based habits are powerful because they remove internal negotiation. You don't debate whether to act, you act because it's who you are. So ask yourself again, who am I becoming? Not who do I impress? Not who do I compete with? Who am I becoming? Because this journey is deeply personal. Comparison distracts. Envy drains. Focus fuels. The only real competition is between your current self and your potential self. And your potential is far greater than your fear. Fear predicts loss. Potential predicts growth. Which voice will you amplify? You can't eliminate fear completely, but you can reduce its influence by taking action. Action disrupts anxiety. Movement interrupts overthinking. Execution builds evidence. Evidence builds belief. Belief strengthens action. And the cycle continues upward. This is the compound effect of disciplined living. Small improvements in mindset, habits, and standards create exponential results over time. You won't notice the transformation daily. But one day, you'll look back and realize you think differently. Move differently. React differently. That's evolution. And evolution requires commitment. There will be seasons where progress feels slow. Seasons where you question the path. Seasons where others advance faster. Stay anchored to your vision. Not a vague dream, but a clear, defined vision of the life you're building. Write it down. Visualize it. Revisit it often. Clarity fuels persistence. Without clarity, obstacles feel random. With clarity, obstacles feel temporary. When you know where you're going, setbacks become detours, not dead ends. And here's something powerful to remember: you don't need external permission to elevate your life. You don't need unanimous support. You don't need perfect conditions. You need commitment. Commitment to growth. Commitment to discipline. Commitment to becoming uncommon in a world that rewards average. Average is comfortable. Excellence is intentional. Excellence requires sacrifice. Sacrificing distraction. Sacrificing comfort. Sacrificing the version of you that plays small. But in exchange, you gain strength. Confidence. Influence. Freedom. That trade is worth it. Imagine looking back years from now, knowing you didn't fold when it got hard. Knowing you didn't surrender to temporary emotion. Knowing you chose growth over comfort repeatedly. That version of you exists. But it's built daily. Through choices that seem small in the moment. Choosing to train when tired. Choosing to focus when distracted. Choosing to try again after failure. Choosing to believe when doubt whispers. Each choice is a brick. Lay enough bricks, and you build a foundation. Build the foundation, and you can support any level of success. This is the final reminder: you are not stuck. You are not behind. You are not incapable. You are in progress. Progress requires patience. Patience requires discipline. Discipline requires decision. Make the decision now. Not emotionally. Not dramatically. Calmly. Clearly. Decide that quitting is no longer aligned with who you are becoming. Decide that growth is non-negotiable. Decide that your future self deserves your effort today. And then take one action. Just one. Because action turns intention into reality. Stay consistent. Stay focused. Stay disciplined. The transformation you're seeking isn't out there somewhere. It's built right here, through your next decision. What if 1 year from today, you barely recognize yourself, in the best possible way? This isn't just the end of a video. It's the beginning of a new standard. You didn't watch this entire journey by accident. Something inside you is awake now. A higher expectation. A stronger identity. A refusal to settle for average. And that spark? That's not temporary motivation. That's transformation trying to take root. Most people will close this video and go back to old habits. A small percentage will pause, reflect, and then take action. Which one are you? Because personal growth, success mindset, self-discipline, and long-term motivation are not theories. They are daily decisions. The kind that feel small in the moment but reshape your entire future over time. The world is loud. Distracting. Addictive. It constantly pulls your focus away from your goals. But the people who win in life aren't the loudest. They're the most consistent. The most focused. The most disciplined when no one is watching. And now you know what that requires. It requires standards. It requires structure. It requires showing up when it's inconvenient. The version of you who achieves financial freedom, builds unshakable confidence, develops mental toughness, and creates real impact, is built through repetition. Through identity shifts. Through refusing to quit in moments where quitting feels reasonable. Right now, you are standing at a silent crossroads. Nothing dramatic. No spotlight. Just a quiet internal decision. Will you go back to comfort, or will you lean into growth? Because make no mistake, growth will demand more from you. More focus. More patience. More discipline. But it will also give you more strength. More clarity. More control over your life. And here's the truth about success in 2026 and beyond. The future belongs to those who can control their attention, manage their energy, and execute consistently in a distracted world. That can be you. But only if you stay committed. If this message resonated with you, even slightly, don't let it fade into inspiration without action. Anchor it. Lock it in. Make this a turning point. Here's how. Subscribe to this channel right now if you're serious about building a powerful success mindset, mastering self-discipline, and leveling up your life in 2026. This isn't just content. This is training. Weekly mindset shifts. Practical strategies. Real growth principles you can apply immediately. Turn on notifications so you never miss the next breakthrough lesson. Drop a comment below with one word that defines the person you're becoming: disciplined, relentless, focused, unstoppable. Make it real. Declare it. And if you know someone who's on the edge of giving up, share this video with them. You never know who needs this reminder today. The next level of your life will require a next level version of you. So build it. Brick by brick. Habit by habit. Decision by decision. And remember, this channel isn't about hype. It's about execution. It's about helping you develop the mindset, habits, productivity systems, and mental strength necessary to thrive in a competitive world. Your transformation doesn't happen overnight. But it does begin with one committed choice. Let this be it. Stay focused. Stay disciplined. Stay in the game. Because the person you're becoming is worth the effort. And this is only the beginning.